From an anarchist perspective, the military is a fundamentally coercive institution that exists to uphold state power, perpetuate hierarchies, and enforce the interests of the ruling class. The very existence of a military implies the need for an organised hierarchical force that can exert control and violence over others, often at the expense of individual autonomy and collective freedom. Here's a breakdown of an anarchist critique of the military and an exploration of an anarchist alternative. The military serves as the enforcer of state power, both domestically and internationally. It is the tool through which states assert their sovereignty, enforce their borders, and expand their influence. From an anarchist viewpoint, the state itself is a system of centralized authority that oppresses individuals by restricting their freedom, imposing laws, and maintaining social hierarchies. The military, as the arm of the state, is a part of these acts of oppression. The military-industrial complex, where the interests of the military, government, and private corporations are intertwined, demonstrates how war and militarization are economically driven. This system prioritizes profit over human life, leading to endless cycles of violence and the exploitation of resources. We anarchists view this as inherently corrupt and destructive, as it commodifies conflict and perpetuates global inequalities. The military's primary function is to exert violence or the threat of violence to achieve political ends for the ruling class. We anarchists oppose all forms of coercion, particularly when they are institutionalized and backed by the state and corporate power. The use of violence by the military is a method to maintain control over populations, suppress dissent, and impose the will of the powerful on the less powerful. This is fundamentally at odds with anarchist principles, which emphasize voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, and freedom. The military also normalizes the idea that violence is a legitimate means of solving disputes, both on an international scale and within societies. This normalization of violence contributes to a culture of aggression and war, making it harder to imagine peaceful alternatives. We oppose hierarchical structures that concentrate power in the hands of a few, and the military is one of the most hierarchical institutions in existence, with rigid chains of command and an emphasis on obedience. Soldiers are trained to follow orders without question, even when those orders may conflict with their own personal ethics. This suppression of individual autonomy is antithetical to anarchist ideas, which prioritize self-management, direct action, and decentralized decision-making, as well as free association. The military's hierarchical nature also mirrors and reinforces broader social hierarchies, including those based on class, gender, and the concept of race. The recruitment and retention of soldiers often relies on exploiting working class and marginalized people who are disproportionately affected by the violence that the military inflicts. In the place of the military, we advocate for a society based on voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, and decentralized, non-hierarchical forms of organization. Here are some key components of an anarchist alternative to the military. Rather than relying on a centralized state-controlled military, we propose the idea of community self-defense. This involves decentralized local groups of people organizing to protect themselves and their communities from external threats. These groups would be based on voluntary participation, collective decision-making, and a commitment to non-coercive principles. Community self-defense prioritizes the protection of people rather than the defense of state and therefore ruling class interests. It is rooted in the idea of solidarity and mutual aid, where communities support one another in resisting oppression and ensuring their own safety without resorting to militarisation. Mutual aid and solidarity networks are also essential components of an anarchist society. These networks involve communities coming together to share resources, knowledge, and support in times of need. In the context of defence, this could mean providing food, shelter, medical care, and other necessities to those affected by violence or conflict, without relying on ruling class or state institutions or military intervention. These networks would operate on the principles of horizontal organisation, where all members have an equal say in decisions and resources are distributed according to need. This approach not only provides for the immediate needs of people, but also builds strong, resilient communities capable of resisting external threats without resorting to militarisation. The military, from an anarchist viewpoint, is an institution that perpetuates violence, coercion, and hierarchy, all of which are antithetical to the principles of anarchism. We envision a world where communities are empowered to defend themselves through decentralised, non hierarchical means that prioritise mutual aid and direct participation. By rejecting the militarisation of society and embracing alternative forms of community organisation, we seek to create a world free from the domination and violence that the military represents. Thank you for listening, everyone. All the best.